Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend John Opalewski, who is our coach, our mentor, our guru of good things. And today, John's going to introduce a really special guest that he has with us on the show. John, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well, Jim, and really excited to have a special guest with us today, Aaron Hlavin. The title of the pod today is What Makes Pastors Thrive and What Takes
Mm,
Them Out. And
yeah,
Aaron has been a friend of mine for a very long time. I knew Aaron when he was about 4 years old
yeah.
and
Wow.
have just followed him all the way through, and he's had a wonderful journey, youth pastor, associate pastor, executive pastor, lead pastor, and then for the last, I think, 6 years, is that right,
Coming up on
Aaron?
6 years. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
six
was fast.
years, the network superintendent for
Mm.
the Assemblies of God here in
In
Michigan, and it
ministry
has
network.
just been an amazing. Um, it's been amazing to be on the sideline watching that journey, and
Mm.
not just the growth of Aaron's career, but the growth of Aaron as a person.
Yeah.
And so, Aaron, we're so delighted you're with us. We know you're a super busy guy. Thank you for carving time out to be with us today.
Happy to be here. Love you both. And hopefully this will be valuable to those listening.
Sure will be. I want to just get us started because I know time is really a valuable resource to you, especially, but you get to travel a lot. You and I have been a few places here, but I know when I came home and unpacked my suitcase, you came home to pack yours again and go to the next place. So hundreds, if not thousands of pastors you come across on a regular basis. You're talking to them, you're eating meals, you're teaching them, you're listening to them. Give us some highlights of the good things that are happening with pastors, with churches, but then maybe if you could kind of shift into as well, kind of the bookends. This is the good stuff. Here's the stuff I'm really concerned about. What do you see from that perspective that very few people have?
Yeah. I would say that one of the exciting parts, let's start with the good stuff. I always like to
Yeah,
start with the good stuff, is there's just an incredible spiritual hunger for the true, authentic presence of the Lord right now.
right on. Mm.
I'm seeing that across generations. I'm seeing that across ministry leaders. I'm seeing that across ministry positions. We brought in for our council an old school preacher, Martha Tennyson,
Yeah.
and she came in and preached. And afterwards, I can't tell you how many young leaders came to me and said, "Thank you for showing us what you grew up with that I never got to experience."
Wow.
Mm.
What they were identifying was the passion, the hunger, the
Mm.
joy. I mean, she's an 80 something year old lady who jumps around on the stage and has fire in her bones and is normal and fun and full of the presence of God. And so
Yeah.
I think there's a spiritual hunger. And I think out of that, there's a strong desire for discipleship.
Mm.
I think people want to grow deep now. They don't just want to grow cool. I don't think churches have this. Cool is still good. Keep your buildings looking nice. Keep your church going well. But cool is not the factor anymore. They want to grow deep roots. They don't want to be blown by the wind and fall over. They love that. And I think the other thing I'm seeing out of that is a desire for holiness. Um,
Mm.
the pursuit
Interesting.
of godliness is starting to come because the more they're getting rooted in the Word of God and the disciplines of God, they're starting to find out that some things just don't line up with their life anymore. And
Right.
Mm.
I'm seeing just a pursuit of that. Um, and I would also say an authenticity has come back to the church,
Mm.
both through correction and new direction. I think it's both sides of that, our failures and our mistakes, and then also the things that built us on good things, those foundational blocks, are starting to create a genuineness for the authentic, real, the real
Right.
leader.
Mm.
I think 30 years ago, I would say that you came to church and you wanted to know how kids ministry was, how the building was, how youth ministry was, and those are still important. I think today the number one thing people do is they check out the pastor first.
Mm.
They go online, they want to see the
Interesting.
sermons, they want to see the personality, they want
Wow.
to know what's happening. That's why pastors need to be careful with what they're putting online in content. They go to the
Right.
pastor's social media, they go to the pastor's
Yeah.
comments on every kind of cultural issue, said or not said. And so I think the reason for that is they want somebody authentic to follow because they're looking for an authentic faith. And I would say two more quick things. One
Yeah.
is churches and pastors are moving away from, I wrote this note, performance driven ministry
Hmm.
to more of spiritual formation. And even larger churches are finding ways to have smaller communities within their larger church.
Right.
In some ways, while the church is getting larger, I'm seeing more collaboration amongst churches.
Mm.
Uh, Churches, even outside of different denominational or independent focuses, but also I'm seeing this move to spiritual formation, and small is winning the day, even in large contexts. Life groups and small groups are no longer just a strategy, they're part of the community. And how do you create smaller groups within a larger group at the same time? So those are some encouraging things that I'm seeing. Um, and one of
Aaron, if I could just intercept real
Yeah,
quick on that. You just said so many things, and there's all these like neurons firing in my brain.
sure.
Uh, my brain still works apparently. It You said something that really caught my attention is that formation doesn't happen. I think the way formation has tried to happen is we're going to tell you what you can and can't do. You give your life to Jesus, here's the list.
Right.
And I don't think that's how it works. I think it's here's how you walk with Jesus. Here's how you engage scripture. Here's how to have conversation with God. And out of that comes, oh, I better not do that anymore, or I better start doing that. I just read that today. We had when we were in high school, we led a kid to the Lord, to myself and one of my Christian friends, and he started reading the Gospel of Matthew, and he got to chapter 5, and in that chapter, there's if you look lustfully at a woman, you've committed adultery with her. And so he comes to us at school, and he says, "Is that true?" And we said, yes, it's true. And so he wouldn't call a beautiful girl after that. He said, there's a Matthew 5:28. And it was,
That's great.
but he was, but he came to that, not because we told him that. He came to that out of his own uh, pursuit of a
Right.
relationship with Jesus. And I feel
Right.
like that's such an important thing to point out.
Yes.
It's a shift from what it was back when it was, here's the list, stay in line. And now it's the familial fall in love with Jesus. And
Yes.
it's this. What if we just let the gospel do the heavy lifting?
Yeah.
It's a return to the gospel, and the presence of God is doing the heavy lifting, as opposed to pastors and teach. Let me just say it this way. Pastors, if you and run your church by a list of rules, you're going to have constant turmoil, constant conflict. You're going to have a distance between the presence of God and the understanding of why we do what we do. And you're going to constantly be losing people and gain. If you can teach people to fall in love with Jesus, he takes
Right.
care of most of the problems.
That's
And
really true.
that's really the shift that I see happening. And it's a great shift. It's a wonderful shift. It's returning back to probably more of a biblical view, focused on the presence of God and what he asks of us.
Now
Yeah.
that's the good stuff. There was a two-part question I asked, and that was, what do you see God doing, but also kind of the challenges. What do you see out there that seems to be, tripping us up or making us not successful or not effective? What do you see as you're out there?
Mhm. Uh,
Because your phone rings a lot.
Yeah. So these are the hard parts.
Yeah.
I'd say the church individuals are more critical and negative than probably I've ever
Mm,
seen. So
Mm.
it's this weird thing. You've got this authenticity and hunger, but as you know, authenticity, anything in life needs a maturation process.
yeah.
So when authenticity becomes the goal and a desired outcome, we sometimes have an immature approach to getting to authenticity, and we think everything needs to be addressed, everything needs to be called out, everything needs to be a
Yeah.
big issue in the name of being authentic and transparent. So we're in a season where it's a good front end, but we've got to go through that middle part to get to the maturation of what is really an authentic person. Authenticity is not calling out everybody over everything. Authenticity is about you. It's not
Yeah.
about focusing on everyone else. It's about you and what other people as individuals are living in their daily life. And so there's more conflict right now, probably than I've ever seen, uh,
Yeah.
which is really hard. And I think that's made pastors and leaders spiritually exhausted. I think emotionally worn down. I have pastors telling me that they've gained more weight in this last season
Mm.
because they're eating more. Their habits have changed.
Right.
They're losing things. I think the fatigue factor.
Mm.
You've heard that phrase. Expectations haven't really decreased, but cultural trust has shifted significantly.
Yeah.
And so there's very little, as much as people are looking to who the pastor is before they come to a church, they also don't trust the pastor for a long time.
Right.
It's an interesting, when I
Long
got
time.
elected to serve as superintendent, people elect you because they trust you. And the minute you get elected, they stop trusting you because you're in a title.
Yeah.
And,
And
and
Aaron, that dynamic is interdenominational, just so you know.
good. Oh,
Yeah.
thank God for that. I'm
Yeah.
so glad to know that. But that's where pastors are navigating more complexity,
Yeah.
more social. I wrote these down. Social, political, and theological challenges are at an all-time
Hmm.
high. Again, out of a desire to know God more and out of authenticity, pastors are being forced to answer theological questions in the midst of political questions, in the midst of social justice issues, in the midst of governing a church when the pastor themselves doesn't have it all figured out in their own mind yet.
Mm.
And you're jumping now from seven different conversations in a 5 minute period of time on seven different subjects, and it burns things out. And I think that's led to a drift, an isolative nature in leaders. Um, I think pastors
Mm.
are so wore out from humanity that they're tending to drift into isolation, and that's
Yeah.
dangerous.
We know that. We
Yeah,
see it too. You know,
creates all sorts of other problems.
yeah. I think, if it was about 3 years ago when end of 2022, Barna came out with a survey, a pretty far-reaching survey. 42% of pastors said they were burnout.
Mhm.
And when asked what the main contributors were, number one was the ongoing stress of the role.
Yep.
Number two was isolation. And number three was the polarization of our culture.
Right.
Those are the three. Uh, and so
Yeah.
Jim, I've lost count of how many times on this podcast we have talked, and we're going to talk about it more coming down the pike
Sure.
here, about the need for pastors to have life-giving, replenishing relationships. Some people in your life that you don't have to be on for, you don't have to be filtered around. Now,
Right.
probably not going to be unfiltered around your congregation,
Yeah.
but you've got to fight for those because the tendency of what you and we all do is for us to get so busy that friendship gets put on the shelf. And so, Aaron, I wanted to ask you this. Where do you see pastors being the hardest on themselves?
Yeah, there's a cost to all of it. And I wrote down some notes again. So pardon me if
Okay.
I look down, but I think pastors judge themselves increasingly, and we used to, and I think it's back on the size of their church, the financial strength of their church, good or bad.
Yeah.
They judge Sunday's success on this is the first thing I hear. Man, Sunday was a good day. We didn't have any complaints.
Mm.
So we've reduced the success of ministry to um, the minimal baselines of conflict, of numbers, of income, measurables that tend to give us peace and comfort. The problem with that is when you have a bad Sunday attendance. When I go speak at a church,
Right.
every time I go speak at a church, I hear this. I don't know where everybody is today, as if
Yeah.
I'm judging the congregation because I'm not. I don't care about that. I preach to who's there, and I assume this is your church. And if not, I'm not worried about it. But we worry of that. And so ministers are living and dying by quite frankly, things that I don't think God cares that much about.
Right.
I don't think the heaven is keeping a scorecard of how many people were at Jim's church on Sunday. What I think heaven's scorecard is, did people hear the message of Jesus preached with truth? Did somebody come to know Jesus Christ for the first time? Did someone get a healing in their life? Did the scripture permeate something? Were relationships solidified? And so I think the pastors are hard on themselves on things that the only people that are keeping those stats are themselves.
Right.
And maybe they're bored. I don't know. Maybe some of those
Uh,
dynamics.
Yeah. Uh, I've come to this conclusion, I don't know if it's right or not, that the number one problem pastors have, and by the way, all humanity has,
Yeah,
is the space between their ears
sure.
and the internal conversation that they have with themselves, the messaging, that
Yeah,
tape that runs, and most of the time, many of it's I'm not good enough. I'm not doing a good enough job. I'm not the man or woman for the job. I don't know how to engage in difficult conversations. I'm never going to get past this number. And there is this self-defeating, uh, sometimes self-hating message, and it influences absolutely everything in
yes.
their personal life and in their professional life. And I've just seen a flurry of it.
Yeah,
And so, I've talked about that for how many years have I talked about self loving yourself? 20?
long time.
Yeah.
A long time. And here it is bubbling up in a lot of conversations now. And so we're gonna get on that, Jim. You and I are gonna actually, our next podcast, we're talking about that very thing.
Right on.
So um, Aaron, how does that impact a pastor's leadership, them being hard on themselves like that, unjustly hard?
Yeah. It goes one of two ways in my experience. We become incredibly controlling or incredibly passive.
Mm,
Hmm.
What I see is you have pastors. So I'll say this, and this will probably get me in trouble with somebody who watches this, but I don't understand pastoral leadership. There's two markers I see. One is when I see pastors allow people to talk to them in a manner that is disrespectful, disconcerting, and unbiblical. And I'm not talking like they disagree. Pastors should, we're way too touchy about things. We think we go one of two ways. We think everybody has to agree with everything we do. So we paint a wall and somebody's upset and we say that's disunity. No, it's not. People are allowed to not like stuff you do. They stay at
Yes.
your church because they like more than they don't, but nobody ever likes your church 100%, and neither do you as a pastor.
Do I?
And so when you look at it, we either become controlling and we say things like this: you're in disunity, you're out of here. We become almost dictators of a church. And then we expel people. We tell them they can't be friends with their friends that they've known for 40 years in our church. And we try to control things, or we go incredibly passive and we let the stronger personalities take over the church.
Right.
mm,
Either way, you're not leading, you're
Right.
reacting.
Right.
Either way, you're responding. And I think a lot of pastors are paralyzed in decision making, or they're
yeah.
frantic in decision making. And
Right.
I've learned the art, and maybe you guys can speak more to this, but I've learned the art of I'm trying, and I continue to try to learn the art of asking good questions to bring resolution. Rather we stay together or not is not the issue. Rather we resolve it fully, but to bring some sort of connection to our heart of what's the real issue going on. Had a guy come in one time and he says, I hate everything you're doing in this church. I can't stand anything you're doing. Nothing. He goes down the list, 30 minutes. I'm just listening.
30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I let him talk. And I'd known him my whole life. He had been in the church
Okay.
long before I got there. And he said to me, but it's working. And I don't know what to do with that. And I looked at him and I said, listen, the problem I don't think you're having is the church. The problem is we've lost relationship. And he said, you're right. I don't feel like I know you anymore. And what he was struggling with, the church had outgrown his influence. and it had outgrown some of his relationships. So leaders, I could have reacted, you're being disunified, or I could have got passive and said, I'm so sorry that we've changed your church. But instead, I got to get to the issue of what's really happening.
Yeah, and that's the middle ground, right?
It's the middle ground.
Yeah.
It's
But it's a deeper
caring for
understanding.
somebody. It's
Yeah,
caring for the people, not just correcting or directing people.
right.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that your role unfortunately has to do is for lack of a better phrase, do autopsies on something's terrible's happened. There, what was once alive is now dead, whether it's a church or a person. But specifically as it comes to pastors, you've done a lot of autopsies on people that were doing well a season
Sure.
ago, and
Yeah.
they something happened. They burned out. They met with a moral failure, but for whatever reason, they are temporarily or sometimes even permanently out of the game. Can you can you give us a couple of things that you would like if you could go back up river? You're pulling bodies out of the river, but if you could go back upstream where people are falling into the river, what is that? What do you see as the root causes of burnout, failure, all those
Yeah.
issues?
Yeah. By the way, the more you describe my job, the more I wonder why I do this.
Yeah, I've always wondered that. Yeah.
I'm
I
listening
figured
to
you're
this.
being punished for something.
I'm going,
God made you
wow,
a
what
youth
did I
pastor and a superintendent. You were naughty somewhere, buddy. I'm telling you.
or this is yeah, this is it. Anyway. Emotional numbness, I think, is one of the first things I see. And
Yeah.
let me
Yeah.
expound on that. If you're feeling feelings, that's actually not bad. Now, they can get out of control. What
Yeah.
concerns me more in ministry is when you go numb,
Right.
when you feel nothing, when nothing excites you, that's not healthy. When nothing really devastates you, the church could be on fire. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's a numbness, um, puts you in a spot where you stop feeling. When you stop feeling, you stop responding to humanity, your family,
Mm,
yourself, the Lord.
wow. Wow. Yeah.
And I think that when I hear pastors say, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I'm not, the church isn't doing good. I don't, they're just numb. They're flat. That's one of the worst signs. And then usually I see non-clear thinking.
Okay.
Um, uh,
Yes.
Decisions are made that used to never be made like before. Like you make a decision and you go, would you have made, and I ask that question a lot, would you have made that decision 5 years ago? No, not at all. Well, why did you make that decision? Did the culture change? No, I don't know why I made that decision. When you don't know why you're doing what you're doing,
Right.
what you're just
Right.
doing, that's a warning sign that you're
Yeah.
just surviving. You're not intentionally living. Another is changes in your sleeping habits,
Hmm.
changes in your
So,
communication habits. You're more short. You say things like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. I got to get this done. Those are warning signs that I've noticed in my life when I'm like, I don't got time for this guy. I don't got time for this. I don't got time for this situation. This
Yeah.
late, whatever. I think cynicism,
yeah.
if you find yourself having opinions on everything, on everyone, on things that don't really matter, I think that's a warning sign. I always say this, if people aren't on your hearts, they'll be on your nerves.
In yours.
Yeah. And so if you
Yeah.
find that everyone's on your nerves, the problem isn't everyone, it's probably
Mhm.
you. And then two other ones I wrote down is you start to withdraw from meaningful relationships.
Mm.
Yeah.
And what I mean is, it doesn't always mean that you don't have them. It means you withdraw from them.
Right.
Uh, Both of you are dear friends to me. When we talk or have dinner or lunch, travel together, I'll tell you the truth. I tell too much truth. I tell you the whole thing. Um, it's withdrawing. It's if John says to me, Aaron, are you doing okay? Or Jim, you say to me, are you doing okay? And I go, yeah. And I know I'm not. That's withdrawing.
Right.
Withdrawing doesn't
Right.
always mean you're in a room locked in a closet and you don't talk to anybody. It means you withdraw your heart from the people
Right.
who love you and care from you the most. And
Right.
so then spiritual practices become more functional than they become formative. And so you start going through the motions.
Yeah.
And the truth is, pastors know how to do church. We're good at doing church. We have all the
Right.
tools and resources on how to do church, but being the church sometimes gets sacrificed at surviving the church to do the church as a leader.
Yeah.
That's a t-shirt
And
right there. Yeah, that's a bumper
yeah.
sticker, a t-shirt. That's yeah.
And Pastor, if you're watching or listening today and that describes you, in some way, shape, or form, can we just urge you to reach out for help?
Yeah.
I mean, we usually save this to the end of the podcast, but I just feel compelled to say
Yeah.
if Aaron just read your mail, go to convergecoach.com, click on start a conversation button. We'll spend a half hour with you. One of our team will spend a half hour with you, and maybe we'll be able to help
Yeah.
in 30 minutes, no obligation to you. If you're there, I'm of this mind that you're not going to get out of there on your own. You're
100%.
stuck
Yeah.
and you need help to get unstuck. Um, so I'll just leave it at that. Could say a lot more about it. Aaron, I wanted to ask you this question because of your sweeping view of pastors. You've got a great vantage point, a great perspective. In your mind, what separates pastors who lead with joy and have longevity? What separates those kinds of leaders from those who struggle
Yeah. Yeah.
to do that?
Good question. I would say this, the best, healthiest pastors are one who build their lives, not just their ministries. Um, Building a life includes ministry, and ministry invades life. It's a part of every part of your life. But every pastor who I know is healthy has to build a life separate from ministry. It includes ministry, but if your life becomes ministry, you've already started
Interesting.
down an unhealthy journey.
Interesting.
And so pastors have to have a strong sense of identity outside of their role.
100%.
Um, and I saw the actor who played he died recently, Dawson on Dawson's Creek. I forget his name, James Vander or something. And he was about 2 weeks away from dying, and he did a post and he reel, and he shared how he went away for a weekend, away from the camera, the lights, his family, and everything. And he got really discouraged when he had to answer one question: who am I when nothing else is there? And this is
Mm.
a famous actor, and his response was, I
Right.
realized I'm a child of God.
Mm.
And I don't know where his faith journey was at, but it was a
Yeah.
powerful video of self things. And so um, I think pastors have to ask, who am I without the platform?
Right.
Right.
Who am I? How am I stewarding my responsibilities in my personal life? My identity is more in whose I am than where I am and
Right.
what I do.
Right.
And I think healthy pastors live by the code. It's a phrase I used to say when I pastored, and it actually was given to me by my staff, framed over the blueprints of our building, and it hangs in my office now. And it's this: it says, I care more about this church than my role in it. One of the things that keeps a pastor healthy is to recognize you're only there for a season. You
Yeah.
don't
Right.
own the church. You're there for a season, and knowing that you're part of a bigger plan of God keeps your heart recognizing that everything doesn't rise and fall on you. So your identity stays rooted in God because there's another season to come. There's another
Right.
That's right.
season to walk into. And so, and of course, John, you've talked about this for decades, healthy rhythms, rest, relationships, staying connected. Um, those kind of things really help pastors. And I think the last thing is this: the ability to laugh.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, there are stretches where life is too serious in my role.
Yeah.
And so I
Sure.
will tell Jamie, we're only going to watch some comedies. I don't want to talk about anything. I just want to laugh. Who are fun people to hang out with? And part of the other thing is cutting people out. And this sounds terrible, but removing people from your life who suck the life out of you as best as possible. Now, as a pastor, you always have that.
Yeah.
But I had a lady from one of our churches who was just relentlessly sending me Facebook messages for a year on not about me, just about things she was upset about. And I finally said, "Look, I'm not your pastor. You have a pastor. I'm not going to engage with you anymore." It's
Yeah.
it, and she was offended. But you know what? I had to create some margin because I don't have time to answer 17 emails or Facebook messages a week.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
has a pastor. So, and I
Yeah.
pray for that pastor. So I think we have to learn to say, how do we separate That and so when I was lead pastoring of a pretty good sized church, John will tell you he served on my team for a minute. I would turn my phone off at like 6:30, 7 o'clock every night. And people said, "How can you do that?" Well, I did because I had young kids at home who deserved a dad. And
Yeah.
so I think healthy rhythms and boundaries. I stopped telling people why I couldn't meet with them on Friday because it was a family night, because they don't accept that. I just said, I can't meet with you.
I'm booked. I got an
I,
appointment.
I have an
Yeah.
That's right.
appointment. When
Yeah.
people came to me at church on Sunday, I want to make an appointment with you. I said, call my office. 80% of them never do.
Yeah.
But that was a shift from me going, sure, let's schedule it right now. And now I'm
Yeah.
loading up my calendar. So healthy rhythms that create smart processes that help you have moments to be a human outside of that.
Yeah. That one thing you talked about, the laughter. Generally a pastor, if you're not a pastor, you might not know this, but you ride in the hearse with the deceased body and the funeral director. And I don't know if you know this or not, but funeral directors are some of the funniest people on the planet. But that's why they're up to their elbows in dead bodies all day long and mourning people. So when you get them alone, you say, okay, what's the grossest thing you've ever seen at a funeral potluck? The stories go on all the way to the cemetery, and it's hilarious.
I
They're
have a new question I need to start asking. I never
yes,
did that.
yeah, yeah, it's great. Hey, your perspective again, we talked about that your job makes you not want to have your job as I describe it, but there's one that I really like, and that is you're in the room with other superintendents, other denominational leaders. And I imagine the conversation's been going around because of the Barna studies we've mentioned. What's the most proactive thing you've seen or you're doing to help pastors live emotionally healthy lives? What is it that you're doing from your position or you're seeing other people do? And we have, presbyters and executive presbyters that listen to the podcast and whatever that is in other denominations. What would you say to leaders who lead pastors about how to do that in a way that the people they're serving are emotionally healthy?
Sure. And let me just say, as much as I joke, I really do love my job. I love what I get
Absolutely.
to do, and I love
Yeah.
helping pastors. I think there's a couple of things. Number one, normalize health. I
Yeah.
think leaders are starting to more and more say, um,
Mm-hmm.
we want to normalize your health before the crisis. I always say it
Mm-hmm.
this way: deal with something while it's an issue before it becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And in ministry, we have this perfected concept that every pastor has to have it all together all the time. Church people believe that. That's why church hurt exists,
Wow.
is because they
Yeah.
believed in a pastor as if they were equal to Jesus, and they forget they're
Wow.
humans. And so
Right.
pastors are going to say dumb things, do dumb things. I'm not
Yeah.
talking using sinful things. I'm just talking about things that just are human
Yeah.
and
Careless.
careless.
Whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there are the more serious ones that need to be addressed,
Yeah.
100%. But I'm talking about, we have to build into our culture, and leaders are doing this, building into our culture access to counseling. We have that in our network. We have what are called safe zones, Christian counselors that our ministers can go to that are non-reporting to us. Now,
Yeah.
if they come with a serious issue, the counselors are trained to say, you need to go talk to your
Yeah.
leaders because this is beyond, we're not covering up sin here. This is,
Right.
but
Right.
we've had many pastors who have marriage issues, and while it's an issue, they go get help before it becomes a problem. And
Right.
so we got to normalize that coaching and access to spiritual direction. I think we have to be leaders that a pastor can call and say, I am struggling with depression, and they
Mhm.
don't have to worry that depression, it means they're out of the pulpit.
Right.
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 Sin, I'm having an affair, you're going to be out of the pulpit.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
I'm depressed, I'm lonely, I'm sad. My marriage and my wife and my husband, we're not doing well. How do we get help?
Right.
My kids are struggling in life. How do we normalize healthy conversations where people
Yeah.
can feel as a leader they can come to you? I think that's critical starting point. We've worked hard at that in Michigan. I think we're there. We've even appointed a person whose job description is to care for pastors.
Right.
And we hired them full time, and he is out doing that all the time. And as a superintendent, I have to be comfortable not knowing all the things that are happening in our network and trust somebody to do that, which is
Yeah.
wonderful for me to be healthy, but at the same time provides a place where people don't feel like going to the superintendent is a big deal, but going to a friend who works at our network is a
Yeah.
beneficial thing. And so, you have to create those environments for honest conversations. Um, I would also say you have to elevate what you or evaluate what you celebrate. Uh,
Okay.
I think one of the things that creates unhealthiness in ministry is when every person who's on stage is a mega church pastor, you send a message. When
Mm,
every person who's on stage uh, is looks the same, when every person is of a certain
Mm.
age or a certain
Right.
gender, you
Right.
send a message. So we've tried to make sure that at our events we have different representations of different sized churches and different seasons, men and women, different ethnicities. Why? Because if you will never set a healthy perspective of ministry if it only looks one way.
Sure. That's great.
And,
That's
and
very
so
insightful.
leaders
Yeah.
need to do that in a manner that says, something is bigger than just this. It's not,
Yeah.
you have to do this, you have to do that. So we've had guys like Carl Vaders, who's been on this podcast,
Yeah.
come in, who
right.
talks about being a small church pastor is not a bad thing. God has always used
Right.
small church pastors. We
Right.
celebrate our small, medium, and large. We have
Yeah.
separate trainings for each of them, and none of them are to beat up the pastors. It's to encourage them, just be you, just be
Right.
healthy and reaching your community. Those are the metrics of
Right.
ministry. So I think leaders are doing that more and more. I think that's the key. And even for local pastors, can I encourage you? Evaluate what you celebrate in your church. If you
Mm.
only celebrate numbers, guess what? When numbers drop, your church is going to hold you to numbers.
Right.
You
Right.
know, when
Yeah.
my board would say, "We're growing, you're doing a great job," I'd say, "No, we're growing because we're doing a great job. We
Yeah.
might not always grow, but that
Yeah.
doesn't," because
Yeah.
I didn't want to be judged by the success and then also the struggle that can be indicative of struggle too. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
what you celebrate is what you're going to be evaluated on. So
Right.
Yeah.
celebrate everything healthy. Be cautious about what you're telling your church are kingdom values.
And Aaron, you said so much there. I wish we had more time to unpack all of this with you because it's so good. You talked about dealing with issues before they become a problem. We use this language. Prevention is easier than recovery, and it's a lot less expensive.
Man,
Yeah.
you're so much smarter than I am. That's really good. I'm going to steal that.
You could steal it.
That's called
I don't know
research. It's
about
not called theft. Yeah, it's research.
yeah,
Research.
yes. But you think about that for just a minute. Um, in terms of dollars, just let's talk about the dollars side of
Yeah.
that. It's so much easier to stay healthy than to get healthy.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's it's not just dollars. When I was at the bottom of the barrel, depressed, anxious, suicidal, I was not only spending a lot of money to get better, I had very little productivity. So there was a
Right.
loss of money, there was a loss of productivity, and the biggest loss was for several years, I was not emotionally available to my wife and my kids.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
The cost of prevention versus the cost of recovery, the disproportion is so ridiculous. And so, pastor, invest in your well-being before an issue becomes a problem, as Aaron
Yeah.
said, because it's a lot easier to deal with an issue than it is with a problem.
That's true in church buildings, pastors.
Yeah,
Use
Yeah.
church building as an analogy. It is better and easier to sand the wood that's getting old, replace a 2x4 and repaint it than to do nothing. And 6 years later, you have mold, and now it's a
Yeah.
$30,000 cost that was going to cost you, I don't know, $80, but a lot of
Right.
time. Put the
yeah,
time into health because it's more expensive and costly down the road than it is
yeah.
on the front end.
And we
Yeah.
know this just from doing this for a long time. The cost of replacing a lead pastor is his or her annual salary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're paying a pastor $80,000 a year and he gets in trouble, he gets depressed, he does
Yeah.
something stupid because he's depressed, the cost, just the financial cost. Think about 80 grand. Think
Yep.
about the loss of giving. Think
Yeah.
about the loss of credibility
Yep.
if it's a bad departure. And if that pastor had a counselor or a coach and that cost them a couple $1,000s a year,
Yeah.
think it's just stupid. The
Yeah.
the difference. So we
Yeah.
pastors, we harp on this. Jim and I harp on this, I think, every other week. Please, if you're in good shape, that's awesome, man. Get
Yeah.
somebody, get a counselor, get a coach on your team so that you can stay well, you can stay healthy, have some good friendships that will keep you doing well. Aaron, we have time for one more question.
Yes, let's do it.
Uh, if you could sit down with every pastor, AG pastor in Michigan for 5 minutes, what would you want to say to them about staying healthy and fruitful for the long haul?
So here's the ones I wrote down. Don't neglect your soul. First and foremost, how is your soul?
Mm,
Don't neglect that. And what I mean by that is I'm a guy who listens to one song on repeat for hours.
mm,
Right now I'm in Worthy is the Lamb. I heard it around Easter time. And you say, that's an old song. I don't know what it is the Lord's doing with me with that, but I'm just getting in awe of how worthy is the
mhm.
Lamb. That's soul maintenance. That's taking care of my
Mhm.
soul. It might annoy my family and every person in my office that has to hear it. I don't care because
Yeah.
my soul is being ministered to it. I
Yeah.
don't have the rule, read through the Bible in a year. Sometimes I get stuck in a book
Yeah, me
and I
too.
tear it apart
Yeah.
verse by verse and then cross reference and if you need to spend a month in the book of John or Acts or whatever, do that. Whatever it is the Lord is doing, take care of your soul. Number 2, stay rooted in your calling, but hold your role with open hands.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
hold everything you have in open hands. Lord, it's yours. You
Yeah.
don't own your church. That means you don't own
Right.
all the problems of your church. That
Right
means
on.
God partnering with you in your church.
Yeah.
So remember that. Number 3, have friends and have fun. 100%. That is so important just to laugh. Um, just to like tonight, we're recording this on the night of the first night of the draft. I can't wait to watch the draft. And I know what I'm going to do because I've done it for the last 20 years. I'm going to order a pizza. I'm going to get a Coke Zero. I used to do Diet Coke, now a Coke Zero. And I am going to turn off my phone and I am going to spend the rest of the night obsessing about it. I might turn it on to text a friend or two. What
Yeah.
about the pick? All that stuff. But I'm going to get engrossed in that. Why? That's good to have fun and it's good to have friends.
Yeah.
Number 4, give yourself permission to be human.
That's good.
Um, when you say something and you get in the car and go, I could have handled that better. Why I could give yourself permission to stop yourself when you're replaying your worst moment of the day and recognize the same grace you give other people towards you is a grace you need to give to yourself.
Right.
Um,
Right on.
you are going to make a mistake. You're going to say something and not realize that it was especially in this day and age, you don't even know if you're saying something that's become offensive from last night to this morning because some TikToker made it evil.
Right.
And you just don't
Right.
know it. And you say it and then you go, oh my word, give yourself an ability to be human. I'd say these last 4, you don't have to carry everything. Share responsibility. The best ideas in your church don't rest in your head, and neither do the giftings God needs for your church to thrive. They exist in the people who God has given you. So don't neglect that and think you need to be in charge and carry the weight of it all.
Right.
I'd say get physically healthy. It's something that when I took on this role, I gained 50 pounds. I'm back down now
Wow.
because I had to get healthy. Part of that is you get type 2 diabetes. That changes your perspective. But the healthier I get physically, the better I feel in almost every other way. Last 2, focus on what you can manage and trust God with the stuff you can't.
Yeah.
Um, here's a phrase I live by: life will be difficult, but God can always be trusted.
That's good.
And I'd encourage you, He is God and you are not. And we need to remember. And lastly, I would say take a sabbatical every 7 years, take a real day off. every week. We're making a shift. We're going to be announcing it in a week, but I can announce it here. The presbyters are already aware of it. We're going to close our office on Fridays. Our team works, our full-time people work 70, 80 hours a week. We work weekends, Saturdays, Sundays, all that. The reason we're doing it is we moved to more part-time admins, and so we can afford to do that. But the real reason is we're telling our entire network, all of our team needs a break. And Fridays,
Hallelujah.
answering emails. Fridays, we're not returning phone calls. It's not going to be, I'm off, my typical day off. My voicemail right now says my typical day off is on Friday. It will change in about 3 weeks to my day off is on Friday and I do not return phone calls. And so we're doing that across our whole network leadership team. Now, there are Fridays we're at conferences and there are Fridays but we're going to make that a standard because we have not been able to manage that as a team effectively. So we're forcing ourselves to manage that as a team. And we're still working just as hard and just as long, but not on Fridays. And I think you might have to reorganize some things in your structure to remain healthy. So those would be the things. And the last thing is just remember, Jesus is still the greatest. He is still the best. There is nothing greater than what Jesus has done in your life and for your life. So if your eyes are focused on him, everything else pales in comparison. Your worst day is not as bad as his worst day. Your greatest day will never be as great as his greatest day. It's in his hands. He loves you and he cares for you.
Love that. I love that. Just a great reminder to breathe between contractions, just that you need to inhale. Awesome. Thanks to both of you gentlemen for your wisdom. I know that those who watch and listen are blessed by wise guys like you, people that have been around the block, but also, got a few scars to prove it. We love that about you guys. So thank you. And those that are watching and listening right now, I hope this has been a benefit to you. And if you have other ideas, anybody else you want us to talk to, like we did with Pastor Aaron today, any other topics you want us to bring up, let us know. We're literally here as a service to you to give you what you need to just continue in this leadership journey, this battle, and be victorious and have fun doing it like we talked about today. So God bless you, our watchers and listeners, because you're important. You're part of what God is doing as you continue to lead from the land.